Hi, hello, folks, and we are here. It's the fourth quarter comeback with TD Live Sports. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the New England Patriots season preview. And we have Tommy along here. I'm Dan, and we're going to take a look at the full schedule.
Welcome, Dan. Pleasure to be with you today. Going through New England Patriots season preview. A lot to talk about, so let's get into it. Preseason football. I love preseason football. The games everybody loves to go to, but nobody really wants to attend. NFC East action again this year with 3 matchups. I believe 2 of them will be on the road. Anything here stand out to you, Dan?
We got a couple of Thursday night games to kick off the preseason. Of course, against Washington. That's going to be interesting. Ron Rivera, he's got to make a decision at the quarterback position. So we'll be seeing actually, I believe, Washington going relatively hard early in this preseason.
I just don't see how you get these starters in there for more than a series or 2. I think Ron will play that 70, 80-man roster and get them going for 4 quarters, but I just don't know how many real snaps you see on Thursday, August 12th, which is a little bit disappointing because that's the only Patriots home preseason game. Moving from the 4 to 3 this year only gives them one opportunity. I guess the saving grace there for New England might be we get an extended dose of Mac Jones early in preseason.
Absolutely. No, it's going to be interesting. We're going to get to see Mac Jones for the Patriots. We're going to see Jarrett Stidham, if he's still with the team, potentially playing for a roster spot, whether it's with the Patriots or another team in the NFL. And with Washington, we're most likely going to see a big portion of a playoff starter a year ago in Taylor Heinicke. So with Ryan Fitzpatrick now entrenched as their new starter, we're going to be seeing the Patriots tested by a playoff starter from this past year, along with Kyle Allen. So that should be a pretty exciting game.
After that, they'll travel to Philadelphia to play the Eagles. Philly, coming off a tough year last year, coming off a tough offseason with the cap issues that they ran into this past offseason. What are you seeing here early in the preseason, week number 2? Maybe a little bit more of the starters here, or are you still thinking they scale back?
I think they'll still scale back with the 17-game regular season, but it will be interesting to see the Philadelphia Eagles with Jalen Hurts. I wasn't too sold on him as being a long-term starter. Of course, trading Carson Wentz, it looks like it's his job to lose, and they did add a little bit of help for him. They added Landon Dickerson. We're not sure if we're going to see him, a second-round center out of Alabama, coming off a torn ACL. And Devontae Smith, the Heisman Trophy winner, perhaps coming back from a thumb injury that kept him out of the combine and the second half of the national title game. So all 3 of these teams in the NFC East are definitely in a rebuilding stage. We did see Washington make the playoffs at 7-9 last year. Obviously a very poor division a year ago, but all these teams are on the up and up. So it's going to be interesting to see who claims a starting job, whether it's with the Giants, with Azeez Ojulari. Lots of good talent with those teams, but a lot of youth and inexperience as well.
And finally, we round out the preseason here with the New York Football Giants. I feel like the Patriots have played the Giants in probably 17 of the last 20 preseasons. I feel like the Giants are probably 15-2 in those games. I feel like we've seen some studs emerge from the Giants, such as the Victor Cruz 3-touchdown game preseason versus the Patriots. There's been some special performances there over the years in this preseason matchup of Belichick's former team winning Super Bowls there with the Giants and Parcells versus Belichick's current team, the Patriots. So this is one that, as a New England fan, we look forward to every year.
This is the annual David Carr All-Pro preseason performance. So you might see David Carr coming out of retirement simply for this preseason game to put on a show against the Patriots. We've seen it 15 to 20 times by David Carr in the preseason, and it may just happen again. But in all actuality, we're going to see the Giants perhaps bringing Barkley back slowly, seeing what he has in that final preseason game to ramp him up to full speed for the Week 1 regular season. I think for the Patriots, this is where you're going to see probably at least a half of their starting unit, and we'll see how the offense looks with Cam Newton. It's going to be a big adjustment this season.
So let's just speak to a little bit of the significance of these 3 games. When we enter camp here, I believe they will have an 80-man roster. I believe there's potential up to 90, but I believe it will be set around 80 men so that they don't have to deal with the split squads and any of those practice limitations. And they will have to cut down at this point. So following this Giants game, Dan, can you take us through a little bit about that cut process?
Yeah, so they're going to be evaluating all types of players. And one of the things that you see with the Patriots is the emphasis on special teams. So that's something to keep an eye out for the entire preseason. Even if a player doesn't necessarily fit in as far as a positional value, like a Matthew Slater or a Nate Ebner, they're looking at guys that can really contribute on the special teams and fight it out for those roster spots. So they're going to be dwindling down that roster as the preseason goes. And that final game is going to be something that a lot of these guys that are getting cut are going to want to put good film out there to see if they can potentially hop on with somebody else.
Or even just get onto one of those practice squads.
Absolutely. And the Patriots definitely have a lot of young talent on this team. And it's going to be a tough fight this year. So they've found a lot of undrafted free agents that have made significant impacts, whether it's John Jones, J.C. Jackson, Malcolm Butler. So a prime position for undrafted free agents, free agent signings to come into New England and really try to make a name for themselves.
So after cuts, after everything comes together, we got week 1, baby, September football. Month of September, we have 3 games. So you'll notice here that there is a long layoff between the week 3 of preseason and opening day. Sunday, September 12th, the Miami Dolphins come to Foxborough. Tua Tagovailoa, Brian Flores, and the rest of Miami come in for a late afternoon game. Last couple times we've had these early September games here in New England, it's been 85, 80, high 80s in the stadium, real hot, which honestly you don't expect in New England. We've seen cramping, we've seen other issues going on. So always interesting to me to see what that weather will be in September. Seeing them push it back to 425 should get the sun to set on the stadium. And you would hope that we don't have any conditioning problems or cramping problems early in the year.
I completely agree, and it's going to be an interesting division game to start off the season. New England has historically gotten off to relatively slow starts in the Belichick era. Even in years that they've won 13 or 14 games, it's usually a 1-2 start, a 2-2 start, something along those lines. So they're usually a little slower to get out of the gates. So having a tough division matchup on week 1 is definitely going to be a nice early test for Cam Newton and the team. Do you anticipate Cam starting week 1?
I'm not ready to solidify an opinion yet. So to me, I think that preseason that we looked at is going to have a lot to do with that. I potentially believe that Cam Newton could be a preseason cut, and I know that sounds crazy. The contract money is not huge. If Mac Jones proves he can come out and play, I just think that the offensive design and the approach that they'll need to take with Cam versus Mac or Cam versus Stidham just does not fit. To me, I think if Mac Jones is ready to go, you look at Mac Jones as your starting quarterback, you look at Jarrett Stidham as your backup quarterback, and you look at Brian Hoyer as your emergency, where he's not suiting up week in and week out. And to me, if Mac is ready to go, I do not believe Cam Newton will be on this roster to play backup quarterback, play second fiddle.
If Mac isn't ready, do you anticipate Jared Stidham being cut and then they start Newton, or do you think it all has to unsettle?
So I would completely agree with that scenario there. So if Cam will be on the roster, I believe Cam will be starting. I don't think that you can keep Cam around to try to put him on the bench. In that scenario, if you have Cam starting and you have Mac as your backup, there's absolutely no reason to keep Jarrett Stidham. And in that case, you're either looking at potential trade during the end of preseason, trying to get something back for him, or you just outright cut him. and let him go fend for himself.
Now, if they do go with trading Stidham to a team like Houston Texans with Nick Caserio and they start Cam Newton, say Mac Jones is ready around week 6, week 7, the Patriots are off to a bit of a slow start. Do you anticipate them being in the market to trade a Cam Newton? Or do you think at that point they would just sit him down and go with Mac?
I think at that point you're probably pot committed and you sit him down. Looking at what you'd have left on the roster there between Hoyer and Newton, if you're benching Newton for Mac, the only way I move on from Newton entirely is if he's going to be a malcontent in the locker room there. At week 6 or week 7, if you're starting the year with Cam, you're not going to Cam because you're not going to Mac because things are going well. You're looking at transferring over to Mac because you're a 3-4 football team, because your offense is stagnant, because you're looking for a shot in the arm there. So at that point, I'm not thinking that there's going to be a huge value for Cam out there in the league. And I think as a middling football team there, he shifts to the backup role, and he still brings some character, leadership, intangibles like that in the locker room. Not to hate on Cam Newton. This is one of those guys that comes in early, leaves late, puts in a full work day, bucket and pail type of guy.
And as we look at the rest of the Patriots draft class and how we project them performing in their rookie year, do any of their other picks stand out as potential contributors in year one, whether it's Christian Barmore, Ronnie Perkins, Radre Stevenson, Cameron McGrone, Joshua Bledsoe, William Sherman, or Trey Nixon?
Yeah, the one that really kind of stands out to me, and I think this is going to be another one of those, how does the preseason go, is Radre Stevenson. So with that running back room, this is a fourth round pick. You took this kid at 120 overall, I believe. 6 foot, 229-pound running back. You got Sony Michel in a contract year. You're coming to that decision point where 5th-year option. I don't think he's going to be remaining with the Patriots. I could potentially see him getting moved during the preseason as well. So that's the one that stands out to me. I think him and Damian Harris together as a 1-2 punch. You have extended years there. You get 4 more years on that rookie pay scale with Stevenson. You got 2 more coming up with Harris, and you're able to transfer that running back field over. You keep James White there as a 3rd down back, and you move forward.
And they also do have J.J. Taylor, who in flashes and spurts last year looked like a capable contributor. I'm in agreement with you. Sony Michel seems like he may be the odd man out. And Stevenson, in our player profile comparison, we had him compared to former Patriots running back Antoine Smith. And since the pick, another former Patriots running back has reached out to Stevenson and LeGarrette Blount. Stevenson said Blount was his favorite running back growing up. So there is that connection, and hopefully Stevenson can be a similar style back. When I'm looking at the rookie class as well, I thought the Patriots had an outstanding draft. I really like how they added Christian Barmore and Ronnie Perkins to that defensive front. Barmore is an excellent interior pass rusher, stout against the run, big-time potential inside there, and Ronnie Perkins had over a 90 pass rushing grade according to PFF in the past 2 seasons. So that's an Oklahoma defensive end, 6'3", 250. Add him to the mix with the Dietrich Wise, Chase Winovich, and let him turn loose and get after the quarterback.
Yeah, when I look at those two, I look at the rotation. So to me, last year when we talk about the New England Patriots, the thing that would keep coming up is the inability to stop the run. The soft front, the interior, where teams could come get 4, 5, 6 a carry and just punish them right down the field. A lot of good edge pass rushing. If they're not going to be able to get ahead on the scoreboard and they can't stop the run, the defensive pieces that they put in place were kind of useless. So to me, I think Christian Barmore there will be getting significant snaps, and I think he's going to be a significant contributor with Devin Godchow, who they also added, where I think you might see Barmore really take over the number 1 slot there on that depth chart early in the season.
I completely agree. And just as we look at week 1, and we're looking at the Miami Dolphins, I'm going to go through their draft real quickly. They had taken Jalen Waddle and Jalen Phillips in the 1st round. They added Javon Holland and Liam Eichenberg in the 2nd round. Boston College tight end Hunter Long in the 3rd round. University of Massachusetts tackle Lamell Coleman in the 7th round, and Jared Dokes, running back out of Cincinnati. I wasn't too high on Miami's draft. I thought they had an excellent free agency. However, their draft class was a little bit too many reaches for me in that class. I'm not thinking that they're going to take the offensive strides that they expect with Tua and Jalen Waddle. I'm just not quite seeing that. However, my favorite pick out of their draft was Javon Holland, 2nd round, the safety out of Oregon. How did you feel they did with their draft in their offseason?
Well, to me, where I think about the Miami Dolphins, I think about the first thought I have is going to be putting up points, sustained drives. So I understand the pick with Waddle trying to go hit home runs, get some easy points, big plays, get some 50, 60, 70, 80-yard touchdowns, because they did not have that ability last year. I just look at it and I would say Jakeem Grant is a very similar player to Jalen Waddle's skill set. So at 6 overall, to me, I'm not necessarily a big fan of that pick. To me, I think last year, looking at the Miami Dolphins, early in the season, we saw Stefan Gilmore really playing some hard press coverage. I believe he had 2 interceptions in that game last year. They let him play. Last year, early against the Dolphins, the Patriots came away on top. It was a very, very physically contested defensive ball game. I think a lot will depend on how they let that Patriots defense play. If they can if those cornerbacks can go get physical, I think that the Dolphins will be in for a very long day. I think that they have exceptional advantage on the outside at the cornerback versus wide receiver matchups. And I think that they do have the pieces in place to have a formidable pass rush where Tua will be getting hit early and often.
And the other thing I'm looking at with Miami is the quarterback position. They did add Jacoby Brissett to replace Ryan Fitzpatrick. Do you think there's any chance he supplants Tua Tagovailoa as the Week 1 starter or at any point in the season?
Barring unless there's an injury, I do not think that Tua will sit for Brissett.
Excellent. So what's your prediction for Week 1?
Yeah, I think that we're going to have a slobber knocker here. I think it might be a little bit ugly on both sides of the ball, potentially with the last 2 Alabama quarterbacks playing each other heads up. I'm going to give the lean towards the Miami Dolphins here coming on the road. I would probably look at the Dolphins in a field goal game. Is going to be the way I would opinionate that. I think that there's still a lot of question marks for the Patriots. Obviously, they've lost some linemen. They brought some new linemen back, like a Trent Brown, losing Joe Thuney. I just look at that offense, and I need to see something there. I'm going to need to be able to see them come out and put up some points, and I'm going to need to see them come back and stop the run before I go gung-ho with this Patriots team.
I'm going to take the Patriots Week 1. I'm going to say they win 21-17. Kick off the season with fans back in the stadium the right way. And behind Cam Newton in a stellar run game, I think they've added a lot to the defense. I don't have full confidence in Tua Tagovailoa, especially in Week 1, with a lot of new pieces on that offense. I think, like you said, it's going to be a relatively tight game, but I'm going to go with the Patriots by 4.
Yeah, so the one last thing to point out here is Bill Belichick versus rookie and sophomore quarterbacks has been outstanding throughout his career. Just confusing and, to be honest, humiliating at times, some of these kids through the years. So never really like to pick against Belichick, against some of these younger type quarterbacks. But in this situation, that's going to be one where I think that the Dolphins do have a run game that, if they can get going, will be favorable in the matchup. We'll see how all those new weapons for New England fit together early. Good start to the year. Good division game. Good matchup.
And the one other benefit before we move to Week 2 is that Will Fuller of the Miami Dolphins will be serving the final game of his suspension, so he will be out for Week 1. They still have Devontae Parker, Jalen Waddle, Lynn Bowden, Jakeem Grant, Preston Williams, Mike Gesicki, of course, the tight end Hunter Long. So a lot of weapons there, but losing Fuller, that's definitely going to be a blow for Week 1. So Week 2, Sunday, September 19th, the Patriots will be traveling to the New York Jets to face rookie quarterback Zach Wilson. How do you feel this one's going to play out?
And rookie coach Robert Saleh. So let's go back and take a step back there where I said Bill Belichick against first-year quarterbacks. I could extend that to Bill Belichick against first-year head coaches, which makes that a very favorable matchup for the New England Patriots.
Absolutely. And the Jets added quite a bit with Robert Saleh. I didn't necessarily agree with the pick at number 2. I would have gone with Justin Fields over Zach Wilson. But they did trade up to get Elijah Vera Tucker, some offensive line help for Zach Wilson. They added Elijah Moore, a wide receiver in the second round out of Ole Miss, who we've compared to Antonio Brown. And then they added Michael Carter, running back in the fourth round, a safety, Jamian Sherwood out of Auburn, a heavy hitter. They added the safety, Michael Carter. So they took 2 Michael Carters out of Duke. And then they added corner Jason Pinnock, defensive back who will most likely be transitioning to linebacker in Saleh's system, Hamza Nasruddin out of Florida State, Brandon Eccles, a corner out of Kentucky, and Jonathan Marshall out of Arkansas. So the Jets did add quite a bit of talent in the draft, as well as had a great free agency, adding players such as Corey Davis, having a lot of weapons now on that offensive side of the ball that we just haven't seen in years past.
Yeah, so the one thing I'd point out about the Jets from year over year here is that the Jets had close to $115 million payroll last year. They sat on some cash, but they had just an unprecedented amount of dead cap. The contracts for guys like Le'Veon Bell, where they had moved on, they just bit the bullet last year and they said, "Hey, look, we're gonna get this thing cleaned out and we're gonna move forward." So I do respect in some semblance what they did to make that decision. That's never easy with a meaty market like New York, biting the bullet and just moving forward like that. But like you did say, they did do very well, in my opinion, in free agency. I think where the fumble was moving on from Sam Darnold to go bring in Zach Wilson at 2. I think that's where they could have potentially moved back and continued to supplement that roster with some foundational pieces with a quarterback in Darnold, who I would feel is already ahead of Zach Wilson, again, at a similar age, different contract situations here with the rookie pay scale. But to me, I'm not necessarily sure that was an improvement year over year for the Jets at that quarterback spot.
No, I completely agree with you on that one. And when I'm looking at this team, they never really gave Sam Darnold a fair shake. But this year, Zach Wilson will be given every opportunity to succeed. Corey Davis, Keelan Cole, Denzel Mims, Jamison Crowder, Elijah Moore, Braxton Berrios. They've just added a lot of talent at that wide receiver position. Michael Carter looks to me like he'll be the starting running back on this squad. Of course, Ty Johnson has an opportunity to contribute, as well as Tevin Coleman and LaMichael Pirine. But the defense also added Carl Lawson, Sheldon Rankins, Jared Davis. They've added a lot of talent on both sides of the ball, and it looks like Robert Saleh, except for the quarterback position that we're not on board with, is putting together a heck of a football team.
And I believe last year with the Jets game, that one came down to a last-second field goal by Nick Folk, if I remember correctly.
Absolutely. So depending on how the Patriots come out of week 1 and what their look is, I do think they'll be starting Cam Newton, so we won't have rookie against rookie. But I do believe that the Patriots got the better quarterback than the Jets in this draft, in Mac Jones instead of Zach Wilson. And for this game, I'm going to go with the Patriots scoring 27 points and the Jets scoring 17. So I have a 10-point Patriots win. I think they're going to force some turnovers, make it a short field, and put some points on the board against this young quarterback.
Yeah, I would echo the same sentiment here. And the one thing I would look at and say is I do believe, again, that those turnovers will come, whether fumbles or interceptions here. I think that there'll be 3, 4, 5 turnovers. Are the Patriots able to capitalize with touchdowns? Can we get a scoop and score here? Can they go take a pick six to the house? Or are those turnovers going to be midfield where Cam Newton comes out and works to get 3? So I could potentially see that going from 10 to 20 relatively quick, depending on those types of turnovers, where they happen, and what type of field position comes from those turnovers.
I agree. And the only way that the Jets, I think, win this one is if the Patriots end up starting Brian Hoyer or Jared Stidham. So pending injuries, I think this is going to be a nice smooth start to the season for the Patriots, kicking off at 2-0.
So the last time the New Orleans Saints came to town, Brady versus Breeze. I believe it was a fourth quarter comeback from Tom Brady. I believe it was the corner end zone. I want to say Kenbrell Tompkins.
It was Kenbrell Tompkins.
On the game winner, and it was just a dandy of a game, ladies and gentlemen. Just an absolute dandy.
I think I was the loudest Patriots fan celebrating in California at that time. That was a heck of a performance. Brady had a frustrating game with his options. Nobody really open. Things breaking down all game long. And then the final drive when you had to have it, the greatest quarterback of all time, the greatest football player of all time, delivered again, putting just enough on it to find Kenbrell Tompkins back end zone. And Tompkins did his best Ocho Cinco impression and came down with that ball for the win.
So I bring that up because we're going to fast forward here Sunday, September 26th. No Brady, no Breeze. These are two guys that represent those franchises for well over a decade. We're looking at over the last 18 months, one moving on to Tampa, the other one retiring. And both of these organizations are in a state of flux, trying to figure out what that next move is. The Saints right now, they have a two-man combo, Jameis Winston, Taysom Hill. Good amount of money paid to Taysom Hill, which might symbolize that you'd think he'd be the starter. But the way Sean Payton goes with that jack-of-all-trades mentality, we could potentially be seeing Winston as the starting quarterback and having Hill continuing those specialty gadget type roles.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting because I didn't really like the draft that they had. They had taken Peyton Turner in the first round, Pete Werner in the second round. Two major reaches, in my opinion. Paulson Adebo is a capable corner in the third round, so that's not as bad.
I believe this is where it comes out, though. Ian Book.
Exactly. So in the fourth round, they added quarterback Ian Book. So this makes me wonder whether they're going to keep Taysom Hill in more of that gadget role, and if they're looking to just have Book as the main backup for Winston. So taking Book in the fourth round was a little bit steep, but they obviously like him quite a bit. We've compared Book to Doug Flutie, the all-time winningest Notre Dame quarterback in history. Book is a little undersized at 6 feet, but has all the intangibles, and the only thing that his coach in college wanted more out of him was to let that ball rip down the field, which with Sean Payton and coming up under Jameis Winston, you have to think that's not going to be an issue, is letting that ball fly.
Yeah, they do have some good options down there in New Orleans. So Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara, one of the best 1-2 punches in terms of top-end talent in the NFL. Michael Thomas 2 years ago, I believe, was 147 catches. I could be a little bit off on that, but damn near 150 balls. It's just a heck of a season. Alvin Kamara last year, piloting the touchdowns late in the year, just an all-purpose back. Very, very dynamic duo they got in those two.
Absolutely, and they do have a very good offensive line there in New Orleans. They have Teron Armstead, Andrews Pete, Eric McCoy, Cesar Ruiz, and Ryan Ramczyk. So if they're looking to run the ball 20 to 30 times with Kamara, Latavius Murray, they definitely have the offensive line to be able to move the football that way. However, that quarterback position is a big question mark, in my opinion. Jameis Winston has all the talent in the world. Just the decision-making and the turnovers can definitely be an issue. So in this one, I'm going to go with the Patriots 24-21 in this one. Start the season 3-0 to set up a perfect matchup with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Tom Brady.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I don't hate it. Again, I think we're, to me, not to be a little bit indecisive here, but just a lot of question marks still up in the air. The New Orleans Saints did lose a heck of a lot this past offseason. They were one of those teams that ended up in a very bad cap situation, had to extend guys out, had to make cuts, had to move on from some guys they would have liked to cap. Playing at home, not having to go to the Superdome, I think we have a 3-point game one way or the other. I'm going to say Patriots by 3. I would probably go a little bit higher on the scoreboard, maybe 30, 31-28, 27-24 type game. I think there will be some points here. I think there's going to be some big plays that do get made. I think both teams, especially from the Saints secondary side, is susceptible to some of those home run plays where you might see an Aguilar house an 80-yarder.
And one of the other things that stands out to me when looking at the Saints team is their lack of linebacker play. So I know they drafted Pete Werner in the second round. I had a 6th-round grade on him. I think this is going to be the Hunter Henry coming out party. I think the tight ends are going to be overwhelming against this team. And with Cameron Jordan up front, surrounded by David Onyemata and Shai Tuttle, with Peyton Turner, the first-round pick, added to the mix, I just don't see them being a stout defensive front. And I think the Patriots are going to be able to run and then set up the play action with their tight ends. In a relatively close game, I think the Patriots eke this one out.
And that brings us to October. Moving on, week 4. Potentially the game of the year to some people here. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the reigning Super Bowl champions, led by quarterback Tom Brady, come back to New England. Sunday, 8:20, NBC national broadcast. And one of the things that we're looking at here as well is the potential for Tom Brady to break the all-time quarterback passing mark somewhere in that game.
I agree. And if you're in New England, Christmas may be coming early on October 3rd. If you bought a ticket, it's going to cost you your entire Christmas. So make sure that you get your tickets as soon as possible because they are going to be going up in value as we get closer to the game. So Tampa Bay, I believe, will also be 3-0 heading into this matchup. So I'm predicting that this is going to be a battle of the unbeaten. Belichick, Brady. This is the game that's marked on everybody's calendar. It's going to be a primetime game Sunday. This is going to be a tough game because Belichick knows Brady better than anybody and vice versa. So it's going to be who can make the others make a mistake. I have the Bucs winning this one 34-17.
I think you're being kind. I think this is going to be a beating. I think that the New England Patriots are going to be put in a very bad spot. I think you're going to have the other 52 members on Tampa that are getting fired up from a Tom Brady pregame speech. I think this game means as much to Brady himself as a Super Bowl would mean. I think this to him is going to be one of those games where he's coming out to prove his legacy, to prove his value to that Patriots organization. And I think when he comes out in Foxborough, that place is going to be rocking. I think the fans in New England have nothing but gratitude, nothing but respect, nothing but the best of wishes for Tom Brady. I think that is a tough sign when the Patriots come out and they hear the other team getting cheered and applauded and just fans going goo goo gaga over the thought of Brady returning to Foxborough.
It's going to be interesting too because he's played against a lot of these defensive players in practice. He knows what they do. They know what he does. So it's going to be the ultimate chess game. I wasn't trying to undersell them by having them double the Patriots score 34-17. But when you put it that way and you make me feel bad, let's toss on another touchdown for old TB12 in the fantasy squad, and let's go with 41-17 Tampa.
Yeah, I just look at this and I think that Tampa Bay Bucs team going into year 2, we'll see again if everybody's healthy, but last year they did have injuries from Godwin. They did have injuries from Mike Evans. They didn't get Antonio Brown till later in the year. Again, tight end position, more injuries at the tight end position. I want to say O.J. Howard had ripped his Achilles last year. So I see nothing but that team getting stronger, bring everybody back, just continuing to build on that offense that they had put in place. And it's not to be disrespectful towards the New England Patriots. I think this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team with that front and that defense that they put together has the potential to absolutely go back-to-back as Super Bowl champions. And I think that there's going to be some games here during this year where you just see everything clicking. You're going to see them all fired up, hitting them all cylinders. And it's going to be death by 1,000 paper cuts or death by big play. Pick your poison. You want to pressure Brady, he's going to beat you over the top. They have plenty of weapons that can move the ball deep. if you want to sit back and let him pick you apart, there's plenty of opportunities for him there to check it down, work underneath to some of the backs and receivers, tight ends, and continue to pick up first down after first down. I just think that is a brutal matchup for some of these teams coming up this year in the NFL.
I agree. The Bucs are the team to beat, arguably the most talented team Brady's ever been on. The Bucs added Joe Tryon, Kyle Trask, Robert Hainsey, a fourth-round steal in our opinion. They traded up to take Jalen Darden, a wide receiver out of North Texas, 5'9", 175-pound burner. They added KJ Britt, Chris Wilcox, and mystery relevant Grant Stewart, who looks like an excellent special teams contributor out of Houston. So when I'm looking at this game, the last question I'll ask you, does Brady put this one far enough out of reach where we might see the debut of Kyle Trask?
I say no, because I don't think Arians does that to Tom. I think Tom gets to come out for the fourth quarter, even if it's just handing the ball off. Brady will get to take the knee in Foxborough.
And that's going to be a beautiful sight to see. I'm very excited for that game, and I can't wait for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and New England Patriots to go head-to-head on Sunday, October 3rd, Sunday Night Football, ladies and gentlemen.
And then I think the Patriots here on October 10th have the perfect rebound game.
Week 5. Exactly.
Perfect rebound game.
So we're not
exactly you get beat up against Tampa, you come back against Houston, and you get to feel good about yourself.
Yeah, we're not even sure who's going to be out there for Houston at this point. A lot is up in the air in regard to Deshaun Watson. We're starting to see and hear that litigation will not be decided up until after the Super Bowl. Whether he's allowed to play this season is another story. Whether Houston would even want him to play.
Whether he would even want to play.
Yeah, so a lot is up in the air. The Houston Texans did draft Davis Mills, a rookie quarterback out of Stanford, as well as they added Tyrod Taylor. Who do you think is going to be starting for Houston in this game?
I was a little bit perplexed there after not having any early picks when Houston finally got to the board. After all of the fight and commitment to Deshaun Watson, to come out and take a quarterback was kind of mind-blowing to me. And of course, we don't know all the specifics about the legal cases. I'm sure they have a little bit more inside information from how the NFL stands about that. Again, with the NFL, you don't need to be convicted of anything. It can just be conduct detrimental to the league, and they have the right to suspend you. So obviously there's some piece there, but I look at this and I say it's Tyrod Taylor's job. Tyrod Taylor was going to be starting over Herbert last year until he got poked in the lung with a needle. Do I think that Davis Mills is better than Herbert? No, I don't. So I would say that I would have to be looking at a starting quarterback of Tyrod Taylor, at least until he either falls flat on his face, you're 0-5, 0-6, 0-7, it's time to see what the rookie's got. Or potentially if you bring another kid or a quarterback in during camp, like you had mentioned earlier, like if Stidham becomes a third or fourth stringer, is that somebody that Casario wants to bring in for a 7th-round pick? And then at that point, do you look at giving Stiddy the chance to see what he's got?
Yeah, and it is kind of a hodgepodge there in Houston. Nick Casario has done the best that he can with very limited resources at this point. So if you look at the quarterback room in Houston, taking Deshaun Watson out of it, you have Tyrod Taylor, Davis Mills, Ryan Finley coming over from Cincinnati, and Jeff Driscoll. So nobody you'd really want in your quarterback room except for Tyrod Taylor and potentially Davis Mills as a rookie with upside. It's going to be tough sledding this year for Houston. Now, we did see them add or bring back David Johnson and add Mark Ingram in the backfield, as well as Phillip Lindsay. So they do have a much better running back room, despite losing Duke Johnson. They did add former Patriot Marcus Cannon and tight end Ryan Izzo, and then added Brevin Jordan, a tight end out of Miami, similar to a Jonnu Smith in the draft. So very easy to see what Houston is doing. They have a similar approach to what Casario was trying to build in New England. Getting physical players, taking Nico Collins, the wide receiver out of Michigan in the 3rd round, a 6'3", very physical, excellent contested catch guy, similar to a N'Keal Harry that doesn't have great separation. So Brandon Cooks, Andre Roberts, Randall Cobb, Nico Collins, Kiki Kuti, Chris Conley, those are going to be the options at wide receiver for whoever starts at quarterback. and it just doesn't look like a very formidable team in this upcoming season. So for this game, I'm going to go with the Patriots scoring. I don't think they're going to put up a ton of points against this team, but I'm going to go with a 21-14 win for the New England Patriots.
Yeah, I think this game is going to be a run-heavy game. Looking at the Houston Texans, I think that they have a lack of talent. Caserio is put in a very tough spot there. Lack of draft picks, lack of cap room, cap flexibility. He tried to make some minor tweaks or improvements to that roster. They're not very good. That's going to be a team that's in disarray. I think when you look at their record last year, that was with Deshaun Watson. Taking him off the field, you're going to be in trouble. I think that this is a team that's going to be committed to running the ball. I think that they're going to be committed to running the ball, whether they're ahead, whether they're behind, whether the game's in reach or out of reach. I don't think they necessarily have those offensive weapons on the outside to go say we're going to be throwing the ball 40, 50 times a game. I think they're going to continue with that running back rotation. And I completely agree with where you're looking at. I'm going to say 17-6. I think the Texans don't get in the end zone. I think they'll hit a couple field goals. I think the Patriots are well in control of this game, the whole game. And at the end of it, we're going to look at it, and there's going to be a 2-score difference.
And that's a great call. I do think they will struggle to move the ball. And the last thing before we move on from Houston, I do want to give Caserio a little bit of credit. Some of the signings that he has had under the radar, adding Desmond King. Of course, they have Vernon Hargraves, Lonnie Johnson, Justin Reed, Bradley Roby. So they're doing the best that they can. Added Terrence Brooks, added Shaq Lawson, Camus Grugier-Hill, Malik Collins, Derek Rivers. So he's at least going out and trying to add capable NFL veterans to at least solidify some of the major leaks that they have on that team. But it's going to be a very tough season in Houston. Even if Deshaun Watson was healthy, he couldn't have played any better last year, an MVP candidate, and they still only went 7-9.
Did they go 7-9? I thought they were a little bit worse than that. You gotta be worse than that to pick a third overall.
My apologies, 4-12.
Yep, there we go. I thought that was a little bit high there. Staying in the state of Texas here in October 17th, back to Foxborough. Dallas Cowboys, Dak Prescott, those wide receivers, that run game, the Dallas Cowboys. I got to give Dallas some credit here. I'm never one to really speak out of the Cowboys. I got to do it. Dallas's defense was so bad last year. They came out in the draft, and I believe they selected 10 different defenders using draft picks. And I have to give them credit for that, for having the self-reflection and the understanding that our team needs an influx of defensive talent. We are not very good. This is prohibiting our success. This is debilitating to our offense and our production. And they came out and they fired dart after dart after dart after dart on the defensive side of the ball. So I will give Jerry some credit for what they did in this past draft.
And I'm going to go the opposite way. I couldn't stand the draft that the Cowboys had. I did like their first-round pick, Micah Parsons. However, all of their other picks, to be completely honest, I could not stand as far as a value selection. Taking Kelvin Joseph, a malcontent from LSU, transferred to Kentucky, wasn't my cup of tea. But coming off a 6-10 year, they at least had the right attitude that the liability is on the defensive side of the ball. I just disagree with their entire method of team building, whether it was overpaying Dak Prescott 2 years too late, rewarding him for having a season-ending injury, overpaying Zeke Elliott a year early, taking Leighton Vander Esch in the first round. It's just been a conglomerate of terrible moves, in my opinion. And despite having a potent offense this upcoming season, I still think that the Cowboys are going to struggle mightily. So I'm looking at their draft. They took Osa Odighizuwa out of UCLA in the third round. Now, Osa was a tremendous high school wrestler, but 6'2", 280 in the middle of your defense without much pass rush. To me, he's a bit undersized. I thought they reached on Chauncey Golston, a 6'5", 270-pound D lineman out of Iowa. I thought they reached on Nashawn Wright in the third round, a defensive back out of Oregon State. The one thing about Wright that sold them is that he's 6'4", close to 200 pounds. I should give them credit. They got a steal in Jabril Cox in the 4th round out of LSU, formerly of North Dakota State. Cox is one of the best coverage linebackers in the draft. But then I felt that they reached on Josh Ball, Quinton Bohanna, Israel Mukuamu, and Matt Farniok. The only guy that looks relatively attractive outside of the 2 that I named is Simi Fehoko, a 6'4", 220-pound burner from Stanford who is pretty much just a deep threat. So they didn't necessarily need that in the draft, but in the 5th round, if you can get a player like that who can potentially be a deep threat to replace a Michael Gallup once he's gone and compete with Cedric Wilson, who had great rapport with Dak Prescott a year ago, it might not be that terrible. But yeah, I wasn't too happy with their draft this year.
Yeah, I can understand with the players being selected, the value of those players. I just think at a certain point here, you need to get those bodies into camp. You need to start trying to make some updates and changes and modifications to that defense. I can absolutely agree with the path that the Cowboys have taken, whether it's looking at some of the contracts they've given out, some of the past first-round picks that they've taken. But at this point, they needed to commit to that defense. This is who they selected. Let's see how it works out. They could potentially be in that same boat next year, taking another 10 picks on the defensive side of the ball.
And I think they will be, but like you said, it's a step in the right direction. They've really neglected that side of the football for a long, long time. And when they have gone to take care of players on that side of the ball, it's been steep overpays, unfortunately. So for this game, Sunday, October 17th, at home against the Cowboys, I'm going to go with the Patriots. I'm going to go with a surprising score here. I'm going to go 31-28.
I'm going to be on the other side of that here. I'm going to say 31-17 Cowboys. I think that the Patriots will struggle to score points. Not necessarily saying that the Cowboys have a vaunted defense, but I do think that Cowboys offense will be able to put up some points. And I think when you get the Patriots into a pass-first mode, they can struggle. And I think if the Cowboys can come out with a couple early touchdowns and put some pressure on Cam Newton, that passing offense, I think we could see the wheels come off, and it could turn into an ugly day for the Patriots.
And when we move on to the New York Jets, Sunday, October 24th, we already went into some detail about the Jets. I'm going to go ahead and the Jets take this one in an upset to split the division series 1-1. I'm going with the Jets 17, the Patriots 14. I think Robert Saleh gets to Cam Newton and gives the Patriots a tough game.
I'm not going to argue with you. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to support that because I think ultimately you're going to have 7-8 weeks here of Zach Wilson. You're going to find out what this kid's made of. Zach Wilson potentially could be on the bench at this point hurt. He could be looking great. He could be looking terrible. From a projection standpoint, I think that the Jets have brought in a good amount of talent this past offseason. They fought hard-fought games last year. Sunday, October 24th could be a rainy day in Foxborough, a doomy, gloomy afternoon. Not a lot of fun, not a lot of passion on that field, and the Jets come out and steal one.
And how do you think they'll do in the following week against the Chargers? Of course, this past season we saw an absolute beating put on by the Patriots.
I believe it was 45-0.
Absolutely. Shut them out. Shut out Justin Herbert. They'll be going to the Chargers, 4:00 game on Halloween. How do you feel this one's going to go?
So this is a cross-country trip here, going all the way across the country, playing different time zone against a good Chargers team, much improved. They've continued to get better through their selections. They've continued to bring back some veterans like Derwin James. Should be getting healthy this year. Add him to that secondary. I think that this could be the end of the road for Cam Newton. I'm going to say that the Chargers come out and get a W. After dropping 3 in a row, 4 out of 5, we're going to see Mac Jones at the start of November.
And you got a score on this one? Is Cam going to get bludgeoned on this game?
I'm going to say 27-17, 27-20, somewhere in there. I think the Chargers will put up 3-4 touchdowns. I think the Patriots just continue to struggle to score points. I think if they're not able to run the ball successfully, and if they get behind in games and they're forced to pass, I think that passing game, regardless of the weapons, I think the accuracy and the precision is just anemic, and it becomes very difficult for him to string together 5-6 passes in a row. I think from watching the tape last year, I think this is where you look at it and you say it's not a weapons thing. This wasn't based on N'Keal Harry. This wasn't based on Jacoby Myers. This wasn't based on what we had in the running back position or the tight end position. This is based on a guy that is putting balls, what I like to refer to as hospital balls, to our wide receivers and tight ends over the middle, not protecting them whatsoever, getting guys blown up, or putting them right into the dirt and not even giving them an opportunity to catch the ball. So I think that this is where we look at it and we say that a 500 football team is unacceptable with the strength of the schedule within the first half of the season. And I think this is where the change begins to get made.
I'm going to go 27-13. I think the Chargers are going to come back after last year's beating and really have this game circled on the calendar. Cam Newton really struggled, in my opinion, passing the ball once Julian Edelman was out for the season. Unfortunately, Edelman had to retire due to that knee. So not having a safety valve there, like you said, he does throw hospital balls. That's why Edelman had to end his career a bit prematurely. When you're looking at what the Chargers have to offer this season, they're going to have, as you said, a healthy Derwin James to go along with Chris Harris Jr., Michael Davis, who's a cornerback that I really like, who I believe is underrated, and Nasir Adderley at the safety position. I think Kenneth Murray takes a big leap at that middle linebacker position here in year 2, the 15th overall selection in the 2020 draft. And then they have Joey Bosa, Justin Jones, Linval Joseph, and Jerry Tillery on that defensive line. So I agree, they're going to be relatively stout against the run. And when you force Cam into being a passer, that's when you're going to struggle a bit. So I have it 27-13. I think Justin Herbert, Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Jared Cook, along with the new offensive line, taking Rashawn Slater, etc., is going to be quite the problem. And my favorite pick that they had in this last year's draft, second rounder Asante Samuel Jr., I think he's going to be an instant starter in the slot. In the nickel, and I think he's going to be outstanding for that defense. So I'm with you.
I got a special call. I got a special call right now. Sorry to interrupt. We got Dick Vitale on the line. What's that, Dickie? What do you have to say about Asante Samuel Jr.?
Oh, he's awesome, baby. Oh,
is it what was that about the diaper, Dickie? I couldn't hear that.
He's a diaper dandy, baby. This kid's a PTP. He's on my old Rolls Royce team like his dad was. Oh, I know
thanks for joining us,
Mr. Samuel. I know you're happy. Up and away.
Sorry to cut you off there, Danny. When we get Dickie V on the line, we all know the rules. Dickie V gets to cut in. When you're a legend, when you're an icon, when you're the main event himself, Dick Vitale. You want to call in the show, you're getting right through, Dickie V. Appreciate it, big guy.
So now as we look at Week 9, I've got the Patriots starting off at 3-0 before dropping one to Tampa, picking back up, beating Houston, beating Dallas, so that would make them 5-1. I have them losing to the Jets, losing to the Chargers, so that puts them at 5-3 heading to Carolina.
So at this point, I got them somewhere 4-4, maybe 3-5. I think that we're gonna have a 2-1 start, and then I have them losing 3 in a row here, 4 out of 5. So that gets to be tough. So 3-5, 4-4, somewhere in that range coming into the back half of the schedule.
And then they'll face a familiar foe, Week 9, with Sam Darnold as the new quarterback for the Carolina Panthers. And when we look at the 2021 draft, they addressed the defensive back position by adding J.C. Horn in the first round, son of Joe Horn. They took Terrace Marshall, the big speed burner, deep threat from LSU in the second round. They took Brady Christensen, the BYU left tackle, in the third round, along with the best blocking tight end in this draft, Tommy Tremble out of Notre Dame. They added 2,000-yard rusher from 2 seasons ago, Chuba Hubbard, running back out of Oklahoma State. They added Davion Nixon out of Iowa. Some had a second-round grade on him, and he was quite the faller. They also added 6'3", 200-pound defensive back Keith Taylor out of Washington. Keith really made a name for himself at the Senior Bowl, looked outstanding, had 3 passes defensed. They added the big boy, Deontay Brown, 6'4", 350, offensive guard out of Alabama. They added Shi Smith, the wide receiver out of South Carolina, 5'10", 190, similar to a Troy Brown type player. And then they added a long snapper in Thomas Fletcher and Phil Hoskins, a defensive tackle out of Kentucky in the 7th round.
Yeah, let's
So
not
I thought they
forget
had an
here.
outstanding draft.
Let's not forget here. They're gonna have Christian McCaffrey back, healthy, ready to go. Matt Rule, year 2. Joe Brady, coming in, starting to build that culture, starting to build that foundation in Carolina of what they want to do, who they want to be. Robbie Anderson there on the outside, DJ Moore, another fantastic season for him last year. Starting to put it together there. We'll see how Darnold comes and fits in. I think that will be the question mark as of today. Is this the Darnold that sees ghosts, or is this the Darnold that can come out and move the ball around, use that run game, use the checkdowns of the backs, and hit some deep balls to some of those wide receivers streaking down the field?
And we do have some breaking news here at TD Sports Live that DJ Moore will be wearing number 2 this upcoming season. So if you had a number 12 DJ Moore jersey, get your razor blade out, shave off that 1. He's going to be dropping down to number 2 this season. So when you're looking
let me do y'all a favor. Don't get the razor blade out. Go get a new jersey so that the 2 is in the center, ladies and gentlemen, and you do not look like an idiot.
Send it back once you shave off the 1. They'll send you a brand new 2, folks. But when I'm looking at this defensive side of the football, I really like what Carolina's been doing. They hit a home run last year with Jeremy Chin. They have Dante Jackson. You add J.C. Horn to the mix. You signed A.J. Bouye. You drafted Keith Taylor. So they're really upgrading that defensive secondary. And then they brought in Hassan Reddick, who had been coached by Matt Rule at Temple prior to him switching to Baylor. They signed Denzel Perryman, added Patty Fisher, have Shaq Thompson, last year's pick, Yetur Gross-Matos, and Derek Brown, as well as Brian Burns, and then the free agent signing of Morgan Fox to go with the draft pick Davion Nixon. To me, they just look like a team that's really understanding how to build a team through the draft and being wise with their spending in free agency.
I think this is a dogfight. I think going to Carolina, I think we're going to have Mac in week 1 of the Mac Jones experiment, and I think this is going to be an absolute dogfight. 2 hungry teams.
I've got Carolina putting up 28 points to New England's 17.
See, I think that this is where we start to see those the running backs, the tight ends get really involved. To me, when I look at that Patriots roster and I look at that wide receiver position, I know they invested money in it, but I don't think they have that top end talent. I don't necessarily see Kendrick Bourne going for 85 for 1,000 yards. I just don't see that. To me, if this team's going to be successful, it's going to be the James White out of the backfield in the pass game. It's going to be Hunter Henry and Geno Smith catching 65, 70 passes apiece. It's going to be Damian Harris going for 1,000 yards. It's going to be Stevenson contributing in that run game. Potentially, if you keep Michelle on the roster, him contributing in that run game. And I think that this is where we're going to start to see the failures in the roster building kind of take over. And I think it will be a dogfight here. I think we do see some of that pass game come into approve. 21-20, undecided. I think we're going to have a one point game, 1-score game, field goal game. I think it could go either way. I'm going to give this one to the Patriots.
So I had the Patriots starting off 3-0, losing to Tampa, winning 2 more to go 5-1, and then coming back losing 3 straight to the Jets, Chargers, and Panthers. I think Sunday, November 14th is when you see the team switch over to Mac Jones for the Cleveland game.
Coming back home. Yeah, no, especially if these stadiums are packed, I can understand that. First start on the road could be extremely difficult, especially if they're coming off a West Coast to East Coast trip from the Chargers to the Panthers. So I think that might be a smart call there. I would say during this 4-game stretch is when I would expect to see it happen.
I think that Bill gives Cam the chance to go back to Carolina and get a win, and when he comes up short, I think that's the end of the Cam Newton era. So with Cleveland, they had an outstanding draft. They took Greg Newsome, the defensive back out of Northwestern. They added Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, the Butkus Award winner in the 2nd round, absolute steal. They reached a little bit on Anthony Schwartz, a wide receiver out of Auburn, who's a track star.
But he can fly.
He can fly, runs in the 4.2 range. They added a great left tackle out of Cincinnati, James Hudson, who was a former transfer out of Michigan. They added Tommy Togiai out of Ohio State, who was one of the more stout run defenders on that team. They took Tony Fields, the former transfer, who went to West Virginia and had the best season of his entire collegiate career there. I bet he wished he had switched there a bit earlier. Richard LeCounte, a 4-year starter, a safety out of Georgia, who's a little undersized. And then a Swiss Army knife in Demetric Felton, who we saw catch a touchdown in the Senior Bowl from Sam Ehlinger, had played running back originally at UCLA, switched to wide receiver, and he'll have the authority to do both at a decent level at the NFL. So with this game, the Browns really took a step forward a year ago, made the playoffs, shocked the Steelers. I think that the Browns are going to come out, and I'm going to go with the Browns.
They were one play away from beating Kansas City in that playoff game. That was a cheap shot, helmet to helmet, where they called the touchback on the fumble. Yeah, that could have changed the whole complexion of last season's postseason. We could have had a Bills-Bucs Super Bowl.
I'm going to go with the Browns in this one. I'm going to say it's going to be 31-21.
I'm going to agree. I think Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, too much. I don't think that the Patriots are going to be able to deal with that run game. Baker Mayfield takes a couple deep shots, connects for a couple scores. I'm going to say 31-17, 31-14.
Yeah.
Browns easily 2-score game.
They've got probably the best offensive line in the AFC. They've got Jedrick Wills Jr., Joel Bitonio, J.C. Treader, Wyatt Teller, and Jack Conklin to go with Jarvis Landry, Donovan Peoples-Jones, who was a former number 1 overall recruit coming out of high school, Odell Beckham Jr., Rashard Higgins, Anthony Schwartz, Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb, Demetric Felton. They have all types of weapons. Austin Hooper, David Njoku, Harrison Bryant. Their offense is stacked. Then you look at the defense. They have Myles Garrett, who's going to be competing for the Defensive Player of the Year on one side, and then you have Jadeveon Clowney on the other side with Andrew Billings and Jordan Elliott in the middle.
It's a scary team. They're built to get ahead, and then they're built to rush the passer.
And then they got an
identity.
They got the steal of free agency by adding John Johnson on a relatively cheap deal to really solidify that secondary with Denzel Ward, the first-round pick, Greg Newsome. They have Troy Hill, a free agent from the Rams, Greedy Williams, Ronnie Harrison, of course, Mac Wilson at linebacker, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, Malcolm Smith, Takaris McKinley, Gustin Porter, or Porter Gustin out of USC. So they have all types of talent there. It's going to be interesting to see who ends up starting because they honestly could roll out 2 defenses capable of starting.
And then we get a short week here to go to the Falcons Thursday night, 8:20, primetime game. This Atlanta team is built to score points. They're not built to play defense.
I agree, and they really can't run the football too well either. They've struggled to find a running back capable of doing that, despite having every opportunity with their passing game.
So they did bring in Mike Davis this year. He did very successful last year in Carolina. They brought him in potentially to fill that Derrick Henry role. Do we expect to see Mike Davis getting 20 touches a week?
I think you'll have to. He is a very feisty player, but as we had seen when he was with Chicago, can disappear at times, has had some weight issues at times as well. Is he going to be the driven Mike Davis? If so, he can be a capable running back, but I wouldn't expect anything too big out of that backfield.
I think the other piece is the commitment. You know, we do have Arthur Smith coming over from Tennessee. Do they have a philosophical identity change here, or is it the same old Falcons? We're going to play from behind, we're going to throw the ball, and Matt Ryan's going to lead the league in passing.
I think it's going to be the same old Falcons, considering they drafted Kyle Pitts over Penei Sewell. So I think that was a big step to say, this is our identity. We do like to uncork. We do like to throw that ball down the field. And also in that market, that's what sells. We see it with the Atlanta Hawks as well. Guys like Trae Young, not very efficient, but they put up a lot of volume, and seemingly that's what the fans there are interested in. So it seems like they're doing what they can to sell tickets and not necessarily win ball games.
I think we're going to have a late score to bring it close. I'm going to say 28, 27-24 Pats.
And I'll agree with that one. I think that's a good prediction right
I think
there.
the Falcons score late, go for an onside kick. Don't get it, game over. Some along those lines. These Thursday nighters always tend to be competitive. I do see the Patriots on the right side of this one.
And the Falcons do have a lot of talent offensively, as you said. They've been up on teams like Tampa Bay a year ago. It's just that defense could never solidify anything to win those games. So 27-24, New England comes out. Mac Jones gets the win, his first career victory. I'm on board with that completely.
That would be reminiscent of Baker Mayfield's first career victory. The Bud Light game in the Cleveland Bud Light game.
Was that against the Jets?
Thursday nighter, yeah, everybody going nuts.
Yeah.
I think it was their first win in 30 games or so.
And that was the Baker Darnold game. That was good stuff.
Magical.
So as we look at November 28th against the Tennessee Titans, how do you see this one unfolding? Of course, Mike Vrabel, close with Belichick, got him in the playoffs a couple years ago to end the Brady tenure. This is going to be a tight game.
I honestly think that this is the team that Belichick has been planning or building that team around. I think that this is the type of team that we're made for. I think with the some of those picks, some of the guys that we brought in, tried to get bigger, stronger up on that front seven. I think a guy like Derrick Henry is going to have struggles against this Patriot defense. I think we can roll in 6, 7, 8 linebackers deep. We can bring in 5, 6, 7 on that defensive line, keep fresh bodies, and play physical football, trying to own that line of scrimmage. I think Tannehill will need to be the one to win this game, and I'm not necessarily sure I'm going to go that route. I think we shut down the run. When I say shut down the run with their commitment, I would say 26 carries, maybe 82 yards. Nothing huge, no big plays, and really just keep that in check.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. They have a new offensive coordinator in Todd Downing. They lost Corey Davis, replacing him with Josh Reynolds from the Rams. Really behind Derrick Henry, they don't have much depth at the running back position. They did add Brian Hill from Atlanta. At tight end, they have Anthony Firkser to go with Jeff Swaim, and they have undrafted free agent Miller Forrestall out of Alabama. So not the most talented team offensively. I think they're going to regress a bit. A.J. Brown is fantastic. They drafted Des Fitzpatrick. But I'm not too sold on that offense. Looking at their defense, they've been awful at pass rushing. So they did overpay, brought in Bud Dupree to go with Harold Landry. I'm going to take the Patriots in this one. I'm going to go 27-17 New England.
Yeah, I'm gonna take the Patriots as well. Absolutely. I think that this is, like I had said, I think this is one where that defense has really been made for, and I think that they'll be fighting hard, giving them a good, nice little Thanksgiving Day treat there on the Sunday 28th game, the couple days after that Thanksgiving Day weekend.
So with that win, I have the Patriots moving to 7-5 as they head to Buffalo Bills on Monday, December 6th, the Monday night game, 8:15 Eastern. That's going to be a very tough game. I think the Bills are going to be the team to beat in the division, as evidenced by Josh Allen's progress a year ago. Very well-coached team, excellent defense. I'm going to go in this one with the Buffalo Bills scoring 31 and the Patriots scoring 13.
You want to talk about an atmosphere? You want to talk about the Bills Mafia coming out? This is the opportunity for the Bills Mafia to go earn their stripes. Coming out as the favorites in the AFC East on a Monday night primetime game in December. That stadium is going to be nuts, out of control, bonkers. And I'm going to love to see Buffalo going crazy like that. I hope the Patriots can hang in there, but I think this is going to be a little bit too much to handle. I think this is going to be a rough game for the Patriots going into that bye week.
And the one thing I want to commend the Bills on is that they have been taking your scouting advice. In this draft, they took Gregory Rousseau, 6'6", 260, Carlos Boogie Basham, 6'5", 285, and then in the 3rd and 5th round, they addressed the offensive line position, taking Spencer Brown, 6'9", 320, and Tommy Doyle, 6'8", 330. So they've got some big boys up there.
Well, last year, one of the glaring weaknesses that I would bring up was that this Bills team is not physical. They have a tough time controlling both sides of the line of scrimmage. They have some explosive playmakers. Josh Allen has really progressed. They have some good running backs there. They play good football. Don't get me wrong, but I think that for them to go to that next step, will just be able to dominate that line of scrimmage. When you see a team like the Kansas City Chiefs come out and they run the ball 32 times with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, you got to be able to do something against that. They were playing for the pass, but you need to have some guys up front, like a big Richard Seymour or Vince Wilfork type, that can really just contribute to shutting down some of those plays. So I like to see it from Buffalo. Unfortunately, they have to play the Patriots. That's never good. But, there's 32 teams in the league, and you got to play them all at some point, sometime or another. So that will give the Patriots a nice little break, though, from that Monday night. There has been some little speculation here that Saturday game would be the shortest bye week in the league, giving them only a 12-day bye, which I don't really think is a big deal. But it does take a couple days away from the players there, getting back to their families. If they're going to have to get back in for a Saturday game, they'd have to come back a day early. Obviously, playing Monday night in Buffalo with the travel day to Indianapolis, not optimal. I'll say it that way. Any thoughts on that bye week location, Dan?
Yeah, I think they're going to have to put that game on the 19th. So hopefully they get that extra day for the Sunday game rather than Saturday. But that's a good observation on your end. Barring health, I'd have them going 7-6 into the bye, with, of course, Mac Jones having come in for the Cleveland game. And then they would travel to Indianapolis, I'm going to say on December 19th, that Sunday. And hopefully they can even make that a primetime game later in the day to give adequate rest.
Yeah, so that's a real tough game. Carson Wentz, that's not what makes it tough. What makes it tough is the Indianapolis Colts have done a tremendous job bringing in talent through the drafts. They've hit seemingly home run after home run after home run. The question mark I have for the Colts side of it will be T.Y. Hilton. So obviously getting older in age, is Michael Pittman able to take over as that number one? And I think that's a big question mark there in Indianapolis. But within the run game, Jonathan Taylor proved to be a home run back last year. Big time offensive line. So hopefully that will allow Carson Wentz, afford him some time to be able to sit back in that pocket and deliver. But I think this is actually a pretty good matchup for the Patriots. I think if they can weather the storm early, get off to a good start, I do think that this is a winnable game.
Yeah, I personally think the Colts are going to be outstanding. Even if Carson Wentz isn't very good, and I'm not a big Carson Wentz fan, I think that their overall team is just outstanding. One thing I did see this past week was T.Y. Hilton was extremely excited, and he was verbal that with Phil Rivers gone and having Carson Wentz as his quarterback, he's going to be utilized in the deep passing game, which they kind of had neglected a year ago. So with Nyheim Hines, Marlon Mack, Jonathan Taylor, Jordan Wilkins, they have quite the backfield there. At quarterback, they have Wentz to go with Jacob Eason, a fourth rounder from a year ago. Then they did draft Sam Ehlinger in the 6th round. They drafted Ellinger's high school teammate Kylan Granson in the 4th round, a tight end out of SMU who will be competing with Jack Doyle and Mo Alley Cox. And then, of course, you had mentioned Michael Pittman. We're also waiting on Paris Campbell to eventually
coming back. Was it a knee last year, or was that an Achilles?
I believe it was a knee, but
hopefully I was thinking ACL. I thought it was an ACL early in the year, but I think it was one of the first 2 games of the year. I believe he tore that.
Absolutely, and then they added Tyler Bonds from USC as well. He was on the opposite side of Michael Pittman in college, along with Amon-Ra St. Brown. So they have that connection with Pittman and Tyler Bonds, as well as having Zach Pascal there as well. And when you look at what they've done on the defensive side of the ball, they took Kwity Paye in the 1st round, which I felt was a big-time steal. Then they have DeForest Buckner, of course, Darius Leonard, Rock Yassin. Xavier Rhodes had a big year last year. Kenny Moore at safety, TJ Carey. So they've got a pretty solid team all the way around. And in this game, I'm not sold that Carson Wentz is even going to be healthy. He's constantly injured. Um, and regardless of who they have there, I think their offensive line with that running game is going to be potent. So I'm going to take the Colts in this one. I'm going to go 24-21 Colts.
We'll put that as the TD Live pick of the day. Colts 24, Patriots 20.
So as we continue moving forward, I would have the Patriots at 7-7 at this point. Sunday, December 26th, the day after Christmas. Not necessarily a good gift that you have to play Buffalo at home. I'm going to go once again with Buffalo. I think their secondary is just too much. This time it's going to be a little bit lower scoring. I think it's going to be a physical football game in the cold weather. I'm going to go with 17-10 Buffalo.
I think this might be a big trap spot for the Buffalo Bills. Essentially, that December 26th game means you're traveling on Christmas Day. That's a tough week of preparation. I think that this might be one of those spots where the Patriots catch the Bills napping. I might say 17-14 pass.
Yeah, can definitely see that one.
A short week here. You're going to have a short week for the Bills anyway with the holidays. Not necessarily sure what they have coming off on that 18th, 19th weekend. My guess is probably game on the 19th. Potentially could have the division wrapped up there. I think this is a spot where the Pats might be able to take one coming down the stretch, trying to set themselves up into a playoff spot.
The reason I'm going with Buffalo in this one is we've seen what Josh Allen can do in the cold weather.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen what the Patriots quarterbacks can do in that cold weather. So maybe it will be Mac Jones. Maybe it will be Cam Newton. Regardless, I think I need to see how they can perform in that freezing condition with the snow before I can have them knocking off a team of the Bills' caliber.
And
I'll
tell you this: at best, that weather is going to be 35 degrees.
At best.
December in New England is not fun, ladies and gentlemen. It is going to be cold.
Those are the ones
it's going to be wet and snowy. Thought we'd probably have some type of precipitation, cold wind, either rain or snow. Not a fun day.
And frozen ground. Never fun to take a shot in the side when you're going down into the frozen, icy ground.
So the NFL always seems to do this to us. We talk about that brutal weather, and then we flip the page to January where we look at two games against Florida teams. Unfortunately, the Jags is at New England, so that will be a little bit of a weather test as well, day after New Year's. But then they go on to Miami, so they get to end the year with a nice date in Miami. So the Jags bring on Urban Meyer, Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne, a lot of new faces there in Jacksonville. A team that looks to be much improved from the number one overall pick this past season.
Absolutely. They've done everything they can to build around him as well. They added Marvin Jones to go with DJ Chark, Colin Johnson, Philip Dorsett, Laviska Shenault. The offensive line, they drafted Walker Little, former five-star recruit at Stanford, to go with Andrew Norwell, Brandon Linder, A.J. Cann, Jawan Taylor. Then at tight end, they brought in Luke Farrell, who Urban Meyer is very familiar with from Ohio State. And then, of course, at running back, Etienne to go with last year's 1,000-yard running back rookie, James Robinson, as well as Carlos Hyde, a former Urban Meyer product at Ohio State, who has great familiarity and is excellent in short down and distance. On the defensive side of the ball, they have all types of speed at the linebacker and defensive end position. Josh Allen, Kayvon Chaisson, both former first-round picks. You have Taven Bryan, who are looking to take that step forward to go with Malcolm Brown and Jay Tuffley, drafted out of USC. Dewan Smoot, Miles Jack, Shaq Quarterman from Miami, Joe Schobert, Leon Jacobs, Trey Herndon, Tyson Campbell, Andre Sisco, CJ Henderson, Shaquille Barrett. So this is a very athletic defense with tons of speed.
Dan, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to say that this game has playoff implications. One of these teams will be eliminated from the playoffs with this game, from the playoff conversation. I think that this will be one of those games where we look at early January. where both teams will be fighting out for one of those wild card spots.
Yeah, and I have the Patriots coming out on top in this one. I'm going to go with 31 points from the Patriots, forcing a couple turnovers on the rookie quarterback, making it a short field. We're going to go with a 31-20 score, moving the Patriots to 8-8 with a must-win at Miami in Week 18 to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, I just, again, like, look back to that favorable matchup, Belichick against a first-time head coach, a first-time quarterback. I know Urban Meyer has been through the ringer, but this is the NFL. We saw what happened to Nick Saban in the NFL. We've seen what's happened to the other guys in the NFL. I think you got to get through the full slate of games before we can say, hey, Urban, look what you did. So I'm going to come out. I'm going to say that the Jags struggle. I think they're much improved this year, but I think coming up to New England in that weather, I don't think it's going to be a fun day for many of those South Florida kids. I'll say that. Pats, 24, Jags, 21. One-score game.
And with the final game of the season, Sunday, January 9th, at Miami, this has been a place that the Patriots have consistently struggled to play well in. Of course, we remember the miracle a few years ago where Gronk missed the tackle.
Before we get going on this, can I first say thank you to the NFL?
Thank you, NFL.
I want to say thank you to the NFL for this reason. I've seen enough times where they put the New England Patriots going to Miami in September when it is 110 degrees on the field. And then I see them coming up with the Dolphins coming up to Foxborough to end the year when it's 22 degrees. And nobody has any fun on either game. So I want to say thank you for having the reasonable weather early in New England and then giving the fans a chance to go down to Miami during January. I think they're finally starting to understand that this is an entertainment product and that they need to try to alleviate some of the nonsense from the fans' perspective. So thank you, NFL. Starting to figure it out a little.
I'm in agreement with you, and I'll add two pieces there to go with it. I used to love as a kid when the Celtics would be on their West Coast road trip during Christmas break, so I could stay up and watch all the late night games against the Lakers, Kings, Clippers. Seemingly every year it was during that little Christmas break vacation. It was always much appreciated. The second nugget, I'm in complete agreement with you about the schedule. However, the only guy that is going to take an issue with what you said is former Dolphin and former Patriot Wes Welker, who, if you remember, on a Monday night game, Miami, New England, extremely hot down in Miami early in the season, Wes Welker catches a 99-yard touchdown pass from the GOAT, Tom Brady.
Or as Mayor Menino would say, Wes Welker caught the ball.
Colorado beer. But with Miami, Week 18, I have the Patriots coming in 8-8 on this one. I think they sweep the season series from Miami. They're going to cause Miami to go into the offseason, missing the playoffs once again, creating a quarterback controversy, much like the Jets had with Sam Darnold, as to whether Tua Tagovailoa is the guy, and people pointing the finger at management, wondering how you could take Tua with a terrible hip over Justin Herbert.
So I'm going to go the other way here. I think the Patriots go down to Miami, and as we've seen in years past, at the end of that game, we're going to sit there and say, how did the Patriots blow that one? I'm not sure how it's going to happen, whether it's going to be big-time touchdown passes, whether it's going to be turnovers or fumbles. It might be Mac Jones, a couple turnovers from Mac Jones. I'm not quite sure yet, but I think the Dolphins come out on top. I think the Patriots miss the playoffs there. And I think that there's going to be rumblings in New England about what that path forward truly looks like when we look at the end of the year and we see our 4 prized free agents in Kendrick Bourne, Nelson Aguilar, Janu Smith, and Hunter Henry, and the production that was actually received out of them. I think there's going to be some rumblings similar to there has been in the draft about Belichick needs some help with some of these draft picks, about free agency and how the spending is actually being done. Before we go any further here, I want to get your postseason opinion. I think you have the Patriots making it and slide into the postseason. What do you see?
It's going to be a tough breakdown, so we'll see how the whole season plays out. But at 9-8, they will be a fringe playoff team. I'm going to go the opposite direction and say I think this season's going to provide a lot of clarity for the future of the team. Um, I really like what they did as far as the draft. As far as the wide receiving options with Aguilar and Bourne, I wasn't necessarily as high on them for what they had paid, but at least these aren't long-term, gigantic contracts. They can kind of slide in this window as they develop for a couple of years, continue to support these veteran free agent signings with young draft picks. Of course, I think having a rookie quarterback like Mac Jones, it's much better to have veteran receiving threats in the room as well as the two tight ends. Yeah, did they overpay for the tight ends? Absolutely. Although I think the Hunter Henry value is actually relatively good. I think he'll be outstanding. But I think the Patriots are going to see that Mac Jones is their future quarterback. They're going to be done with the Sony Michel experiment and happy with Damian Harris and Radre Stevenson for the next few years. Of course, locking up James White, they have that role cemented in for him. And I think we're going to be interested to see what young wide receivers step up. So you have N'Keal Harry, who we're still waiting on to take that leap, but I liked what I saw out of Jacoby Myers. So lots of reasons to be positive. I like what the defense is going to be able to bring. Getting Christian Barmore, who I had the value of a top 10 player in the draft in the second round, was absolutely outstanding. And then the amount of depth that they have where they can rotate, I think it's just going to be a unique season. And there's still a lot of questions, but I think that we're going to see a lot of guys stepping up to cement themselves and say, all right, this is a guy that we can build with. And then these are the guys that we're not looking forward to having anymore. So,
Yeah, I think from my side, I think the word that stands out that you had mentioned was the clarity. I think when I think of clarity, I think of Trent Brown, I think of Stefan Gilmore, J.C. Jackson, Dante Hightower, Devin McCourty. I think you have a lot of guys here right at the end of those ropes, either last year the deal 1-year contracts or older veterans that are their futures here in New England. Are these guys going to get paid by the Patriots, or we're looking to again recycle some of these positions in backfill? So I think that's what I'm kind of looking at through this season as one of the most interesting points as to what those transition plans look to be, whether it's a Kyle Duggar at safety, whether we're looking at some of these different linebackers coming in if Hightower does decide to leave, and really how that affects that defense moving forward. Because I look at that window right now as the end of this window for that defense before you're going to have to go really invest multiple different assets into either positions like cornerback or bring in high ticket free agents at some of those positions.
So some of the guys that I like as far as developmental players from a year ago that I think are going to take a step forward, I do like Miles Bryant. And then I think Jonathan Jones is definitely a player that you want long-term in that secondary. We haven't seen Jawan Williams take that step, so there's going to be a big highlight on him come preseason. We did like what we saw out of Kyle Duggar last year. Adrian Phillips is a solid player back there as well. They added Jalen Mills to go with J.C. Jackson. I think J.C. is the guy that you want to lock up, but we'll see how things go this year. If your team comes out and your gangbusters playing excellent defense, you can either parlay Gilmore into a trade or you can try to lock him up long term. I think Devin McCourty is at the end of the road, so I would have this as his last year in New England, at least playing at a high level. I thought they did very well without Dante Hightower a year ago, so we're looking to have Josh Uche take that next step. Of course, Jawan Bentley and Kyle Van Noy are both solid players. You can rotate in Chase Winovich along with Raekwon McMillan if he makes the team, former second-round pick out of Alabama. They added Henry Anderson to go with Devon Godchow. They have Byron Cowart from your alma mater, Lawrence Guy, Matt Judon, Anthony Jennings, Barmore, Dietrich Wise, Tayshawn Bauer, Ronnie Perkins, Akeem Spence. So I like what Bill is doing as far as accumulating a lot of bodies, and I think he's going to be able to have a lot of different sets with specialists where they can really utilize and emphasize players' strengths, and I think that they could surprise some teams.
I completely agree with that. I think we'll be seeing that amoeba defense. I think we'll be seeing some of that 4-3 defense, some of that 3-4 defense, some of that nickel. Obviously, a lot of different combinations there. I think it's going to be down and distant dependent on what we're going to be rolling out there and who's going to be out on that field.
Two other things that I think are going to be interesting to watch this season are the development of last year's rookie tight ends, both Devin Asiasi and Dalton Keene. Are they going to be utilized in a 3 tight end set? Are they going to be utilized at tight end at all? And then the other proposal I would have, I would start Trent Brown at left tackle, and I would move Isaiah Wynn over to the right side.
I do not disagree with that. And the other piece there is going to be both tackles, both cornerbacks at the end of the year. What are the decisions being made? So a lot to go, a lot to do. We got 20 weeks of NFL football ahead of us at a minimum. You got to love that. 17 games, 3 preseasoners. We're looking at May 22nd right now. Training camp's just around the corner. Can I get an oh, hell yeah?
Oh, hell yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, that has been your New England Patriot 2021 preseason, postseason opinion, if that's what we want to call it.
And I'm going to go and I'm going to leave us with this. I'm going to go that our defensive MVP this season is going to be Stefan Gilmore, and the offensive MVP is going to be Damian Harris.
I'm going to ditto that Damian Harris as the offensive MVP, but I'm going to actually change my offensive MVP. I'm going to go with Trent Brown as our offensive MVP. I just think that from my experience watching Trent Brown, his impact to the game is just exceptional. He's a monster of a man of a monster. When you see him in person, ladies and gentlemen, just remember to put your jaw back up because it will fall from how big he is. Just an absolute moose. So I'm going to go with Trent Brown, the defensive on the offensive side of the ball. On the defensive side of the ball, I think that this team is going to be predicated on getting pressure on the quarterback. I think Gilmore can be avoided. I think the pass rush cannot be avoided. I'm going to go with Dante Hightower. I was leaning to go Matt Judon, but I think Hightower as the captain of that linebacking core, I think it's going to have to be Hightower, contributing both on the inside and outside. As the most versatile linebacker in this group to come out and really put up some statistics and make some impact plays to these games.
I agree, and I'm also going to make one bold prediction that Gunnar O has 2 punt return touchdowns this season.
Wow, that's going to be special.
Spectacular.
I need one game call. Which game? One game call. Which game does Gunnar house one of them?
He's going to house one of them against the Browns. And the other one against the Jags.
Woo! I was thinking the Falcons in my head, but ladies and gentlemen, we have it there. Gunnar Olszewski, 2 touchdowns on the punt return game. All right, well, any final thoughts here before we wrap it down? It's been a pleasure, very insightful, very wonderful conversation here about the teams coming up. And obviously, as the year goes in, we can check back and do weekly previews of each one of these games as injuries and teams start to form and formalize what each week's actually going to be looking like.
The only nugget I'll add, and it's one other bold call, I'm going to say N'Keal Harry leads the team in receiving touchdowns.
I was actually going to ask you earlier during the preseason talk if you thought N'Keal Harry would be on the Texans.
I think N'Keal Harry is going to be a Patriot, and I think he's going to take a step forward in the right direction, especially once Mac Jones gets into the lineup.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. To me, I hope that kid works out. I hope that he gets a good opportunity here and can really contribute.
Absolutely. I think the sky's the limit. It's time to reach his potential.
TD Live. TD Live.
Thank you guys for joining us. This is TD Live Sports.
It's been a pleasure. TD Live. Peace out.